everybody out there in Chris Fonseca, Chris Crazy Legs Fonseca Comedy Land, everybody in Facebook land, Twitter, Instagram, Google Hangouts. This is the moment you've been waiting for. This guy has been doing comedy for 36 freaking years. Freaking 36 years of comedy. He's been on HBO, Late Night with David Letterman. Oh my goodness sakes, Chris. He's been on Baywatch. Dave Chappelle, the litmus test of comedy, said his comedy set was better than anybody else he'd ever heard. Oh my goodness sakes alive. Welcome to this little tiny stage on Comic Spot. Welcome the Chris Crazy Legs Fonseca. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Linda. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's so nice to see you out in San Francisco today.
Oh, yeah, the background is great. I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Yes, you're in Denver, Colorado. And people in Colorado, if you ask anybody, you guys in Colorado, who's the best comic in Colorado, you know what comes up every time? Chris Crazy Legs Fonseca. How did you manage to be such a celebrity in your own town?
Well, I was lucky to start comedy during the boom in the 80s, and my mentor, who you will be talking to later today, is the one and only Sinbad.
Yes.
And Sinbad gave me a lot of great advice and was able to open some doors for me. He helped me get on the Arsenio Hall show back in the day. Arsenio is a great guy too.
Yes. When I read through all of Sinbad's bios online, the main thing that kept coming out of all everybody's written material about Sinbad, but what kept coming out to me is how humble he must be.
Oh yes. Like I said, I've known Sinbad since 1985, and he's the same guy now as he was back then.
Wow. I think I have you to thank for making sure that Sinbad's coming on at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
That was so awesome. I want to know about Chris Crazy Legs Fonseca as a child. When was the first time people told you you were funny and you got a laugh?
Well, I think growing up with a disability, I have cerebral palsy, and so growing up in a small farming town in Colorado, I kind of stood out, and I thought, as long as I have their attention, I might as well make them laugh. And it proved to be a valuable thing throughout my life.
Yes. So when people started telling you and validating that you're so funny, do you remember some of the first times who were the first people that told you you were funny as a child?
Yeah, I had a couple teachers tell me I was funny, and they would, like, I remember an art teacher, Bob Everett, would always have like what would be considered a dad joke today. but he would always tell me some corny dad joke, and he was like, you know, I know that you're funny, and you should use that.
That's a great story. So when you went on in your life, you didn't, as a child, get up on stage and do comedy. You waited until you were probably 18 or 20.
Right. The first time I did comedy was at a little over 36 years ago now. Last week was my 36th anniversary. I was in junior college and I did a gong show and I did stand up. I did like 5 minutes and I thought, you know, that's gonna be something that I can tell my grandkids someday that I did once. Well, now 36 years later, I actually have a granddaughter who's 2 years old, Sophia, and not only can I tell her about that time, but now 36 years of memories doing comedy.
So you did a gong show in college or at a,
Yes, yes,
and then how did you do in the gong show, Chris?
I took second place
Yes,
when,
yes. And
which
then when did you first go on a comedy stage, on a comedy club?
I went on a dare from my buddy Dave Torres. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Dave.
Um, we were at the University of Northern Colorado, and he showed me an ad for George McKelvey's Comedy Club in Denver for an open mic night.
What was the name of the comedy club?
George McKelvey's George McKelvey actually is quite a history himself. He passed away a while back, but he really did a lot for the Denver comedy scene. And anyway, back then I could still walk. I had cerebral palsy since birth, but I could walk. But I walked and talked like I was drunk. And the host of the show was like, we can't let this guy on stage. He's drunk. Which, for the record, I was because I was so nervous. But the movement and speech was still the same because of the cerebral palsy.
Yes. So how did you develop a voice? You had a coach, a mentor in Sinbad Atkins. Did you take classes or did you just keep going up on stage and working on it?
Yeah,
What things guided you to the success you have now?
I kept going on stage anywhere I could. Like I said, back in the 80s, during the comedy boom, there were comedy open mics and comedy nights everywhere in the country. And Denver has a great scene. Roseanne Barr, of course, started in Denver and kind of put us on the map, and I got to perform with a lot of great people locally, like Louis Johnson, Steve McGrew, Michael Forlack, on and on. And I was very fortunate to be able to learn from great people. My first paid show is a funny story. I did that open mic at George McKelvey, and they invited me back the next week. And then the club owner himself saw me, and he said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, why not?" I had no idea that like the next night was like a real show, and I ended up doing like a 5 minute set in front of Ellen DeGeneres,
What?
who of course is like a mega star at this point. And at the end of the night, the club manager said, "I have your check in the office." And I was like, "No, sir, I paid my tab at the bar." I had no idea it was a paycheck.
That's great. What a great story. You go from doing an open mic to being on a show the next night. My goodness. Tell me about something funny that happened when you were on stage. In 36 years, you've got to have funny stories about being on stage.
There's many stories. One that comes to mind, I was performing at the Hollywood Improv, and I was supposed to do, I think, 10 or 15 minutes, but like 2 minutes into my act, I see a flashlight in the back of the room, which, is normally the sign to get off, and I thought, being the Hollywood Improv, that, some big star came in or something, and they needed me to wrap up real quick. And so I get off the stage, and Bud Friedman, who was the co-owner back then, came up and said, "What the hell was that?" And I said, "I saw the light." He said, "Oh crap, we were looking for something back there."
Did
So
he did he throw you back up on stage?
yeah,
People need to not use lights in a comedy club.
right.
Yeah. Did you ever get a heckler that was funny?
I've had many hecklers. It's, it's funny. I perform a lot in the state of Texas, and I'm, of course, Mexican American, and most people think that Mexican comics don't actually speak Spanish. And so I was down in South Texas doing a show, and this guy heckled me in Spanish. And I'm bilingual, so it didn't faze me at all. And he was shocked.
Lately I like to watch the news in Spanish because I don't
Uh,
know what they're saying and it can't depress me.
oh yeah, that's funny. You know, I have a joke about Donald Trump like to watch sports in Spanish because the word sports in Spanish is deportes.
You knocked that one out of the park.
Yeah,
Over the wall.
yeah.
That's a good one. So tell me about being on late night with one of my heroes, David Letterman.
That was a dream come true. David Letterman, that I can remember, they only had maybe 20 comics every year. So that's a pretty exclusive club. And by the time I did it, they had moved to CBS to the Ed Sullivan Theater. And I remember when I was going through the walkthrough and going on that stage, it was just surreal that I was like in the spot where, Elvis did the Ed Sullivan show. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, it was just amazing, and of course to be on with Dave and seeing Dave out of the corner of my eye laughing. It was awesome.
Wow, what a memory. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Tell me about your episode on Baywatch.
You know, it's funny because when I mentioned to people that I was on Baywatch, they assumed that it was like a small cameo, but actually the episode was written for me. The producers had seen me at an award show and they wrote this episode for me. I basically played myself, a comic in a wheelchair who's trying to get to the beach but couldn't because there was no accessibility. And at one point, I protested by handcuffing myself to Pamela Anderson. I was just telling the story to a friend of mine the other day. When I first got the script, I was like, wait a minute, I can't be reading this, right? I'm gonna handcuff myself to Pamela Anderson. And believe it or not, I still have that pair of handcuffs, and we put a piece of tape around it, and Pamela autographed them.
Ah, do you know how many men must be so jealous that you were handcuffed to Pamela Anderson?
Oh yeah, it's, it's funny because it literally is a trivia question. Do you remember when bars had like those trivia machines
Yes.
where you would pay a quarter? One day I was playing one and the question popped up, what comic handcuffed himself to Pamela Anderson? that's one of those moments where you kind of realize, hey, I'm kind of famous.
Have you ever done any kind of motivational comedy for people with cerebral palsy?
Yes, I have. I've done many like private shows for groups with people with cerebral palsy. A lot of things with kids, and I try to relay a message that I'm just another person. I just happen to be in a wheelchair and kind of talk funny, but in this case, it's a good thing.
Yes. So the thing that I've noticed about people who are differently abled, we don't want to say disabled, you're not
Yeah,
disabled, you're
yeah,
differently abled,
yeah,
is that if you're lacking in one way, you have a strength, a new strength in another way. So,
yeah.
what advantage do you have since you have cerebral palsy?
Well, the advantage in comedy, at least, is that I get people's attention. You know, it's not every guy going up there in a wheelchair and moving weird, but it kind of goes both ways because you have that attention, but you really have to take it to another level.
Yes. So, I was born sort of normal. I didn't have a different able scenario. But in 1996, I got a free gift. I had a drunk driver cause a brain injury for me.
Oh,
So you don't know it by looking at me that my elevator not only skips the 13th floor, rarely goes to the top.
oh,
And so I've been doing comedy, looking at notes for 5.5 years. And then in the last 6 months, finally, I can do a comedy set without looking at notes.
that's great.
Yeah. So I say I have had a long-term relationship with Mr. Notes, Cliff. Cliff Notes.
Uh,
That's my best joke.
that's funny.
That's it. That's all you get.
Yeah.
What do you want to tell people to encourage them to stay sane in a crazy time in our country, in the world?
Well, it is a very crazy time, and I know that in my own lifetime, I dealt with a lot of craziness, and I just roll with it, no pun intended. But like one of my personal heroes is a young man who lives in Las Vegas. Um, we spoke about him briefly a while back. Uh, his name is Kyler Nipper. He is a young man who was stabbed in middle school over tennis shoes of all crazy things. And he almost died, but he started a nonprofit called Carlos Kicks, and he gets huge donations, and then he goes out and gives them to people who need shoes. it's a really cool thing. And he also has started at College Kicks Lounge there in Vegas, which is for teenagers to do like counseling and like arts and stuff. It's a great thing. And, I think we all need to kind of look for a silver lining in life. And Tyler's a great example of that.
Will you send me that information again so I can add it to this post?
Yes, I will, of course.
Thank you so much. Do you have a financial need for people to donate to you if they would like to?
Yes, I do, just because right now there literally is nowhere to perform. Um, I am getting by, but without that money coming in from shows, it is hard to do
Okay.
anything.
Do you have a Cash App or a Venmo?
Yes, the cash app I sent to you and also PayPal. I believe it's crazy like comedy, but you can probably tag it. Did you see it when I sent it to you?
So I'll go look for your Cash App and Venmo and PayPal. And if I don't find it, I'll have you send it to me.
Okay, great.
Yes. So I'm gonna head on out, but before I do you want to tell a joke or two? Do you feel like saying comedy on the way out? Anything?
Yeah, I'll tell a joke or two.
Okay.
Because of course I've been writing during the whole pandemic thing, and there's not a lot of place to use these jokes other than Facebook. Like one of the first jokes I wrote during this time was two guys walk into a bar. Oh no, wait, they're closed. I've also been spending some time on dating apps lately. I went on a virtual date with a female EMT. Ooh. I texted her after the date. She didn't text back. First responder my ass. And I remember back in high school, I was voted most likely to be abducted by aliens. I, I guess that's because every spaceship has a ramp.
You have made the most out of your life and you've made the most out of my day. And anybody who watches this is going to be so inspired by who you are, Chris.
Well, thank you, and thank you for doing this. And be sure to say hello to my buddy Sinbad for me.
I will let him know that if it wasn't for COVID, I would come through the screen and kiss him.
Okay,
I'm kidding.
great.
Thank you so much, you guys. Again, this is a 36-year comedy veteran who's been on Late Night with David Letterman, and he's been handcuffed to Pamela Anderson on screen in Baywatch. It means so much to him. He has to have a backdrop of San Francisco Bay.
Right.
Thank you, Chris Fonseca, Chris Crazy Legs Fonseca. Check him out in Colorado. Get on Facebook and support him. Are you on Instagram and Twitter too?
I am on Twitter. On Twitter, I'm Laugh Roll, LAUGHROLL. I'm not really on Instagram, but I should be.
Oh, well, you can do it tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. After the Sinbad interview, I will add information to this post and make sure that what I put on there is accurate. And let me know about Kyle's kicks, all the things he's doing.
Right. I will do.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your generosity here today. Chris, Crazy Legs Fonseca. Thank you. Love you. So glad to talk.
You too. Take care.
Okay, I'll look for you on those dating apps.
Okay.
Bye. Love you.
Bye-bye. Love you too.
Everybody's talking at the comic spot. The comic spot.